Hey everyone, today we're going to start the digestive system, and similar to the respiratory system, we're going to spend a couple days on the anatomy and the organs that are found in the digestive system because there's quite a bit. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So what is the digestive system? Well, the function of it is it breaks down food into the nutrients that your body needs in order to do any type of metabolic process, such as making ATP, making hormones. It also allows us to get rid of the body's material that we don't use, such as waste, but also things like fiber. So again, breaks down food, rids body of waste. So how are they able to do these two functions? Well, chewing with our teeth and our mouth helps break down food into smaller pieces, and then enzymes that are found all along our digestive tract actually uses enzymes to break down them into nutrients. Then those nutrients are transported to the cells of the body through the bloodstream of the cardiovascular system. And then why is it important to learn about the digestive system? Well, it's essential for providing us with energy and the building blocks in order to maintain life and live. So the four main functions of the digestive system is ingestion, which is taking in food, digestion, breaking down food into the nutrients, absorption, so once we break down those nutrients, we need to absorb them into the bloodstream where they travel where they need to go. And then defecation, which is where we get rid of any indigestible waste or anything that is not needed from the body. In terms of anatomy, there are two main groups of organs. The first group of organs that we're going to learn about is the alimentary canal, also known as the gastrointestinal or GI tract. This is a continuous coiled hollow tube. This is the part of our digestive system that does those four functions: ingest, digest, absorb, and defecate. And then we also have accessory digestive organs, and these are things like our teeth, tongue, and any big glands that secrete things that help us digest food. So in other words, the accessory digestive organs assist digestion by helping either absorb or break down things or move things through our digestive tract. We're going to spend about 2 days on the alimentary canal and 1 day on accessory digestive organs because there's so much to talk about. So again, that's just a point to reiterate, make sure you're keeping up with your studies. You're not only reviewing the information here, but you're doing it at home as well. So here's a picture of our human digestive system. It has a lot of the alimentary canal and accessory organs labeled. I have actually put this in your notes this time, so when I refer to different structures, you can kind of find them on the image. So the first part we're going to focus on is the organs of the alimentary canal. The alimentary canal, also again known as the gastrointestinal or GI tract, it also sometimes goes by the name gut. It is a continuous coiled hollow tube that goes from our mouth to our anus. So, of course, the organs it's going to include is your mouth or your oral cavity, your pharynx, which we've learned about in the last section, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and eventually your anus. Fun fact about the alimentary canal is food that actually goes through that tube technically is considered outside the body because it only has contact with the cells lining the tract, and that tube is open up to the external environment at both ends. It's open at one end with your mouth and the other end through your anus. The analogy that the book uses for this is think about a donut. If you stick your finger through a donut hole, the center of the donut, you're not technically inside the donut, it's just a hollow tube. So before we go into the layers that the organs we're going to talk about today, we also need to talk about layers. What tissues cover and protect the alimentary canal organs? The layers that we're going to talk about, the 4 layers from innermost to outermost, are only going to be from the esophagus to the large intestine. So these are not layers found in the mouth, and these are not layers found in the pharynx. So I just want to reiterate that. I put a double star here, asterisk, to make sure you know that this is just for esophagus through large intestine. So the 4 layers are mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa, and serosa. If we do the first one, mucosa, This is the innermost membrane. It is moist. It secretes mucus. It has surface epithelium that is usually simple columnar, unless you're in the esophagus, and then it is stratified squamous. There are small amounts of connective tissue that help anchor it, and then there is also some smooth muscle layers that go throughout as well. This basically is the lining of our hollow cavity. So this hollow cavity is known as the lumen. The second layer is your submucosa. This is just beneath your mucosa. This is where you're going to find blood vessels, nerve endings, mucosa-associated lymphoid tissues for MALT. So remember, lymphoid, this is going to be for our immune system. And then lymphatic vessels as well that help with that immune system. The third layer is your muscularis externa. This is where you're going to find a lot of your smooth muscle. There are actually 2 layers. These 2 layers we're going to mention again later on in this lesson. We have the inner circular layer and the outer longitudinal layer. And then the last one you have is serosa. This is the outermost layer of the wall. It has the fluid-producing cells, serous fluid, to help prevent friction from happening. There are again 2 layers, visceral and parietal. We've heard these terms before, but the word that we're going to associate with the digestive system is peritoneum. So instead of pleura with respiratory, here the word is peritoneum. Visceral is going to be your innermost layer, and parietal is going to be your outermost, and it lines your abdominal pelvic cavities. These layers help support organs within the abdominal cavity and help reduce friction. So here we go. We have the basic structure of our alimentary canal wall. A couple things I want to point out is here's your mucosa layer. So it points to this very innermost layer that lines this hollow tube right here. The second one is submucosa. So here it's pointing to your green, which is a lot of your lymphatic. If you go to the red, that's an artery. Blues are veins. But you also have over here yellow, and that's going to be your nerve tissue running through there as well. Then you have your muscularis externa. It has 2 muscular regions. Here you have longitudinal on the outside, and that's because it runs up and down. You can see the strands. And then circular, here you can see them. They run as a circle around our layers. And again, here's a picture of our long tube here. Then you have your serosa, which is made up of your peritoneum. Here, this is a picture that just kind of shows, here you have your visceral peritoneum, helps anchor and protect. So your alimentary canal nerve plexus, there are 2 nerves that help control and regulate when things move through the digestive tract and when it causes certain organs to release secretions to help with digestion. And those 2 are part of the autonomic nervous system, ANS. So submucosal nerve plexus and mesenteric nerve plexus. So remember, if you are part of the sympathetic, this is going to cause you to slow down digestion and divert your energy elsewhere. But if you're in the parasympathetic, this is actually going to cause you to start releasing enzymes and moving things through your tract to digest them. So again, here, if you want to see those 2 nerve plexuses, we have, again, nerves are associated with the yellow. Mesenteric is going to be found within that muscularis externa layer. And then if you find your submucosal, that's going to be found in your submucosal layer. Now, when we get into the anatomy of the digestive system, we're going to first focus on the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, and stomach today. So for the mouth, this is known as the oral cavity, and it's a mucous membrane lined cavity. You have your lips. These are also known as your labia. These protect the anterior opening of your mouth. You have your cheeks. These form your lateral walls. You have your hard and soft palate that we learned about in the last lesson. These separate your, I'm going to put actually, I think I wrote this in your notes. These separate oral and nasal cavity. The hard palate forms the front of your roof and it's supported by bone. Soft palate forms the back of your roof. It's a lot squishier. And then in the very back of your throat, you have your uvula. This is usually the dangling projection you see in the back of your mouth when people say, ah, and look back there. You have your vestibule. This is your space between your lips externally and your teeth and gums internally. So in other words, what that means is if you close your mouth and close your teeth, and you reach in and you kind of scrape your gums down on the bottom of your teeth, that's your vestibule. A lot of people put chew there if they're a tobacco chewer. I would highly suggest not doing that. Then you have your oral cavity proper. This is where your teeth are going to be located. And then you have your tongue, which is a big, huge muscle. It's a very strong muscle on the floor of your mouth. It can attach at several different points. For example, your hyoid bone, which is going to be in your neck. But also your styloid process that is part of your skull. Now, your styloid process is the pointy end towards the bottom of your temporal lobe, in case you were wondering. There's also another point of attachment known as a lingual frenulum. This is going to secure your tongue, and it helps limit posterior movement so your tongue just doesn't flop back and cover your throat and prevent you from breathing. So in case you were wondering, because I Googled it, right here is your frenulum where it attaches. If for some reason that's very short, sometimes people can be born tongue-tied and they have to kind of snip that. Other anatomy within your mouth are also your tonsils, which we've learned in the last section are a type of lymphatic tissue that fight infection. Within your digestive system, you have your palatine and your lingual. Palatine is found at the back of your oral cavity, whereas your lingual is found near your tongue. Think of like linguistics, the study of language. So here I put this picture in your note as well. Here, the top hard palate, so nasal cavity from your oral cavity. We also have your soft palate in the back. And the very end of your soft palate is your uvula, your dangling. Other things we can talk about is your lips, your labia, vestibule, this little pouch here and here. And then your lingual frenulum holds down your tongue. You can see that your tongue attaches to your hyoid bone. And then other things that you can look at is your tonsils. So tonsils are going to be found right here, your lingual tonsil behind your tongue and your palatine in the back on the bottom of your uvula. Again, here, this is just another different picture of it as well. So what are the functions of your mouth? Well, mastication, which is just a fancy word for saying chewing food, helps break it down. Your tongue mixes that food that you have chewed and broke down with saliva, where saliva will begin the breakdown of food. And then your tongue also helps initiate once you've broken that food down to swallow it, where it'll go down your throat. And last but not least, your tongue has taste buds on it to allow you to taste sweet, salty food as well. Next, we're going to talk about your pharynx. Your pharynx shouldn't be too much different than we talked about for your respiratory system. It is known as your throat. It is a passageway for food to go down to your stomach, fluids like liquids to go down to your fluid like water, and then air to go down to your lungs. And food passes through your oropharynx, again, your oral cavity, and your laryngopharynx, which is continuous with your esophagus. From your pharynx, food actually gets propelled to the esophagus by two muscles found within your pharynx that we mentioned before. They're longitudinal and circular. And what happens is these two layers, they alternate contraction to help move food through your pharynx and your esophagus. And this is known as peristalsis. So again, here if you want to see where here's your oropharynx, here's your laryngopharynx, and then it moves down through your esophagus. So in terms of your esophagus, this is also known as your gullet. It is about 10 inches long. It runs from your pharynx to your stomach, so it goes through the diaphragm. And the whole physiology or the whole function of it is to help move food through this peristalsis that we mentioned on the last slide. So it is a passageway for food only. Air goes to the respiratory system. It goes down to your lungs and not into your stomach. In terms of your stomach, this is a C-shaped organ. It's located on the left side of your abdominal cavity. Oftentimes, if you're looking for it, it is hidden by the liver or the diaphragm. It's found underneath it. And one second. Sorry about that. So there are two important sphincters, or also known as valves, that are part of the stomach. You have your cardio-esophageal sphincter. So cardio, it's up by the heart, it's near the top. Esophageal, it's where food enters from your esophagus. And where it empties at is known as the pyloric sphincter or valve, and this empties into the small intestine. Now remember what we know about valves in terms of heart valves. These things, for example, valves prevent backflow. Oftentimes, if you have heartburn, usually your stomach acid from your stomach has gone up into your esophageal sphincter through it into your esophagus, and you feel that kind of heartburn and it burns because, of course, your stomach is full of acid. And then your pyloric sphincter prevents things from going from your small intestine back into your stomach. In terms of the stomach, there are several regions. You have your cardio or cardia region. This is near your heart, hence cardi. And it surrounds your cardio-esophageal sphincter. So over here is your cardia. You have your fundus. This is an expanded portion lateral to your cardiac region. So if you go lateral to the side, your fundus is this top ejected part up here. You have your body, which is the mid portion, that has two major curvatures, greater and lesser. So here your greater curvature is on your lateral, whereas your lesser is on your medial surface. So here's your greater curvature, it's on the outside lateral. Lesser is more medial in the middle. And then the last part is your pylorus. This is your terminal end. This is where you're going to find your pyloric sphincter that is going to allow food to go into your small intestine. Here we have a picture, a real image picture of a stomach where you can see up here your cardia region, your fundus, your major body, and then even down here you have your pyloric region. Now the stomach varies in length from 15 to 25 centimeters. Its diameter and volume also can vary, and it depends on how much food the stomach has in it. The stomach can actually stretch to hold about 4 liters or 1 gallon of food when it's full. And when it's not full, it has what these little folds called rugae that present themselves when the stomach is empty. And here is a picture of rugae folded in on itself. Other structures of your stomach include your lesser and greater omentum. These are both extensions of your peritoneum, which is that outside layer that protects it. Your lesser omentum extends from your liver to your lesser curvature, and your greater is going to go from all over your abdominal organs below the stomach. Now, your greater omentum is the one that's easiest to see. It's very yellow because it has a lot of fat in it. So fat gives it a yellow appearance. It helps insulate, cushion, and protect your abdominal organs. It also has a lot of lymphoid follicles to help with the immune system and get rid of any unwanted bacteria that can cause infections. So I took this picture off the internet because it gave a better picture than your book. Here's your lesser omentum. It takes your lesser curvature of your stomach and it connects it up here to your liver. Your greater omentum covers all of your organs in your abdominal pelvic cavity, and it kind of forms like an apron, and yes, it is like a yellow color like that. So here's an actual picture of the yellow covering of it because it's made up of a lot of fat. In terms of your stomach mucosa, it is simpler columnar. It has a lot of mucus cells. And these mucus cells are very, very important. It actually makes a bicarbonate-rich alkaline mucus. Alkaline means it's pretty basic. if you've heard of acid and bases. It helps protect the stomach from being damaged by the acid that your stomach produces. So the stomach acid can't digest, like basically break down your stomach and eat away at it. It protects it from the stomach eating itself. In terms of your stomach mucosa, it has a lot of something called gastric pits in it. Gastric is associated with stomach, so I'm going to put that up here. Within gastric pits are gastric glands that secrete gastric juice. Gastric juice is composed of several things. Some major ones that we're going to talk about here are intrinsic factor. This is needed for B12 absorption. Chief cells. These produce a digestive enzyme for proteins called pepsinogen. Parietal cells. These actually produce the acid in your stomach. And acid is important because it activates enzymes released by chief cells. So it turns pepsinogen into pepsin. And then you have your enteroendocrine cells, and these produce gastrin. And gastrin is a hormone that helps regulate digestive activities. So here we have our gastric pits. And then it has our gastric glands. We have parietal cells here. We also have chief cells, and both of those work hand in hand to help make stomach acid and break down proteins. Here we have our parietal cell and our chief cell. Pepsinogen changes to pepsin whenever HCl is present, which is secreted by those parietal. For the stomach's function, it's a temporary storage tank for food as it gets broken down. So within the stomach churns, mixes, pummels that food, physically breaking it down into smaller fragments, whereas chemical breakdown happens from pepsinogen turning into pepsin. One special thing about the stomach, and it will be on your test, is the muscularis externa, that third layer that has a lot of smooth muscle, has a third layer. Instead of being circular and longitudinal, it also has an oblique muscle layer which runs diagonal. And then what happens is once it breaks down all this food, this processed food known as chyme, it delivers it to the small intestine for it to be absorbed. So that's the end of today's lesson. It was a little long. It has a lot of information. Make sure you go home and review it. You don't just listen to the video and call it good. Otherwise, if you have any questions, let me know, and I hope you guys have a good day.